Hello and welcome to the Buildinginperth podcast with your host, Chris Holland. So, at the time of recording, it's a public holiday Monday. What a good time to get in and record a podcast. I don't have Lita, Terry, Morgan here nitpicking at me, asking me to do this, that, and the next thing. So I thought, why not come in and do a podcast, okay? Now, actually, over the long weekend, I've noticed on a lot of these Facebook channels like Buildinginperth and Renovations and Carpenters Wanted and stuff like this, a lot of clients have been talking about site works. Now, interesting, because this is such a great area. So today's topic of the podcast is going to be everything to do with site works.
Welcome, property investors. This is the Buildinginperth podcast. If you're a property investor or you're curious about investing in property in Western Australia, this is the podcast for you. The reason for that is we're not going to hold back. We're not going to sugarcoat things. We're certainly not going to bullshit you. And we're going to exploit everything that you need to know. There's a lot of negative press at the moment in WA regarding building, and it doesn't have to be. So what we're going to do is help you navigate through that bullshit and create your wealth free of charge. We're just giving you this information. Every month we're going to have special guests on who are industry professionals, and then we're going to release an episode every single Monday. So you're not going to miss anything. So please stay tuned, like, subscribe so you never miss anything, and enjoy.
What is site works? Do we know? What actually is it? I don't think it actually gets explained properly when you speak to a builder or a building consultant or a builder broker. Funnily enough, I was reading some of these comments, and a builder broker commented on one specific lady who's now coming in and having a chat with us, saying, look, you can expect up to 25k of site works. Now, this fella is a building broking company, relatively new, claims to be one of the best, without even knowing the block of land, without even knowing the soil condition, without even knowing the size of it. He's given advice to a client saying, expect to pay 25 grand at least on site works. It shows the experience this character has in the actual building space. But the sad thing is, he wasn't the only one saying around 25 grand. Where does this 25 grand come from? You know, it's insane. So there's a couple of things we want to go over with site works, and try and break it down for you, because it is a bit of a gray area. But most importantly, what clients have to understand is when you sign up for your house, so you see a house advertised, right? Let's say the house is a big 4x2 house and it's $400,000 with all the bells and whistles and whatever else. That doesn't include site works. It's very important to understand that. So when people are sort of navigating their way through putting a house and land package together, for instance, or some clients are actually buying blocks of land and then going and looking for builders, which is completely fine. There's a few things that we have to consider. So number one, what is site works? Let me just rattle off some things. Now, site works is going to have 2 or 3 different levels of pricing, purely depending on the build method. Okay, so a double brick construction build will be your site works will be by far the most expensive. Okay, by far, and I'll get into that later on when you understand what's included in it. But essentially, with a double brick house, it's the heaviest type of construction, meaning you need the thickest concrete, meaning you need big, thick footings, and it all depends on what the soil classification is, depending on how big these footings are, and if we need extra footings or extra concrete or extra real, just because we're building such a heavy structure with double brick. Okay, so number one, if you're going to go double brick, it's your site works cost is instantly going to be more. If it's brick veneer, it'll be about 30% cheaper, potentially. If it's timber, 50 to 60% cheaper on site works. Timber's a light frame construction. There's no bricks involved in it. It's the lightest frame, but the most durable and has the most stability. So your site works cost potentially for this, guy who's saying 25k for site works, for instance. If that's correct, let's just say it's a typical site and it is 25k for site works. The average for the same sort of soil classification report for a timber frame house would probably be about 6 or 7 grand. Massive difference, right? Massive difference. That could be the difference for you to then upgrade your air conditioning or blah, 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 put extra money into the actual finishings of the house. But anyway, so just to keep that in mind, a double brick home will have the highest cost of site works, factual. A brick veneer home will have just under that, and then a timber frame home and or a steel home with cladding, for instance, will be about the same, nearly half price. So something to consider. Okay, now let's rattle this off. Fixed site works costs normally include. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. Fixed site works. Let me just get to that point. Majority of builders don't fix their site works, and they don't fix the site works until such time that you've paid them a deposit. And now this isn't, it's kind of branded as a bad thing in the industry. It's not really. Basically what happens is you pay the client, you pay the builder a deposit, and they'll start to go and get engineering, and they'll get all these reports. There's about 8 reports that we have to get, okay? But the most important one is a contour survey, and then we'll get a soil report, a soil classification report, let's just say. BOW and all that type of stuff comes in afterwards. But essentially that site classification report will tell us what type of footing detail we need. When we know the build method, whether it's double brick or timber frame, we send it to the engineers. We can get the engineer report done that tells us how we're going to build the house and certain components, especially when it comes to the concrete. Then we can, once we have all that information, we can actually give you a fixed price on the build itself. Okay, so it's a gray area because some clients expose themselves by signing a provisional sum contract, or even the site works components, a provisional sum. All you're basically doing is locking yourself into a contract and letting the big builders ram you with extra money, and you can't really break out of it. So you should be getting fixed price contracts regardless. But I would say there's 5% of builders that actually give fixed price contracts. Most of the time it's provisional sum, which is quite unique, right? Because builders, especially the project builders, have built thousands of houses in these estates, thousands. And the chances are on that same street, they've built another house, right? So they know what the soil classification report is going to be, because 9 times out of 10, it's a brand new estate as well. And they've built a double brick home or a brick veneer home or a timber frame home. So the truth is the builders aren't just willing to have a bit of a punt and quote it correctly from the get-go in case they lose extra money. So what they do is the actual opposite. They'll underquote it, sign you up, and then shaft you with a variation. It's one of the biggest rots in the system is this site works thing, hence why we're breaking it down today. So site works generally include the following. Now, I can't give you an exact because every builder has different site works allowances, okay? Most times when you get a house, when you get a price for a house or a quote for a house, it's from the concrete to finishing. It doesn't include any of this, what I'm about to say. So earthworks including removal of light grass and vegetation to a sand pad area if it's needed. This will only really happen when we've got an infill block and it gets overgrown. Generally, if you're building in Eglinton or Baldivis or, one of these new estates like Apsley, when it gets developed, they'll spray like a sort of greenish sand, if you've ever seen it before, and that stops things growing up, and it also stops the wind sweeping off the sand, sweeping the sand away from the actual block itself. So anyway, established, you probably don't need that, but you still do need to prepare the sand pad area. The second thing would be service connections from existing connection points. That will include power, sewer, water, gas, and communication run-ins. So that's a separate price from the actual house build itself. Imagine, again, like I said, the house price is just from the concrete slab to the initial shell of the house. Anything from outside of that comes under site works. So such things as, your gas run-in. So when the gas gets brought from, or the water or the electricity gets brought from, the government provider to the front of your plot of land, the builder then has to bring it into the house. So that component of it goes under site works, not the actual internal fit out of it as such. Curb and footpath repairs, bit of a tricky one. Some builders will not put that in there, but curb and footpath repairs. So basically, depending on the block and the location, there's a lot of trucks and a lot of heavy machinery that comes, especially if you keep building in double brick. You know what I mean? There's just such heavy bits of material and steel and whatever, steel beams and whatever else. So you need big franners and you need cranes and stuff like that. Of course, the curbs and the footpaths are going to get damaged. So the builder puts an allowance in there to fix them. But hey, if they don't fix them, or it doesn't get damaged, you don't get them back. So be careful. Engineering fees for retaining walls and stormwater designs. Stormwater soak wells. Retaining walls is an interesting one. So the blocks are getting smaller and smaller and smaller to the point actually now the developers are allowing us builders to build on top of the retaining wall. So you know how generally if you see a new estate and there's like a nice retaining limestone block in between each block of land, let's say they're 12.5 or 10.5 meters wide, we are now actually allowed to, if we get a retaining wall inspection and it passes the test, we can now actually build your boundary wall on the retaining wall. It's ridiculous, to be honest. It's just the developers, the land developers, squeezing every last inch out of a block of land that they can, to the point where you drive in your garage and you look to the right-hand side or the left-hand side, you're going to actually see the council or the dividing boundary wall in your slab. Like, it's, not very good. But anyway, so again, some of these costs are what's factored in your site works cost. Shire fees, deposits and refundable bonds, excluding planning fees, okay? So basically what this is, guys, is to get a building permit, we have to go to planning, we have to fill out a BA4, or depending on the house, exactly, depending on the location, depending on everything. There's a lot of paperwork and stuff like that the builder has to communicate along with the council or your shire. That's included in some of this fees. Cut off drain to driveway where required. Site safety fall protection where required. So basically double-story houses, or if there's a single-story house with a large drop-off one side, we might need to get some edge protection up in the roof for when the guys are doing the roof sheeting and all the roof tiles. So this all falls under the site works cost. A concrete pump. Now, this is a bit of a rot in the system, I believe. 95% of builders use concrete pumps. It used to be a bit of a trick way for a couple of builders, and I'm not going to name names, but they would underquote jobs deliberately, and then they would use little things like, we need a concrete pump, there's no access. Well, the block of land didn't change. You knew there was not going to be any access because there's 2 established houses next door and we need to get concrete, blah, blah, blah. So concrete pumps are about $1,200. But look, again, that's included in your site works price. Same thing, right? If they don't use a concrete pump, but you've paid it, you don't get that refunded. It's just a rot. Minor modifications to existing retaining wall were used as a footing to the structure, removal and or cutting. That shouldn't be included, to be honest. But again, this is a generic site works cost that I'm giving you. 90mm PVC pipe under a driveway to suit future retic by owner. That's great. It's about $6. Relocating water meter up to 500 millimeters. So basically, wherever they've delivered the water meter on site, they can shift it left, right, up, down, back, or whatever. Soak wells, stormwater disposal, either up to 3 soak wells or direct connection to the council drainage. So generally, I don't quote this part into my site works cost, but this generic plan that I'm reading you from now is a range of builders, and I've sort of mashed it together to give you an idea. But soak wells are about $3.5 grand, so that takes up quite a lot. I did just do a video actually yesterday on direct connection. So some estates like South Guildford and Rose Hill Waters don't have soak wells. What they have is drainage underneath the main roads, and the council allow you just to connect right to it. So whether that's included in your block of land or the soak wells is included in your block of land, there should be about at least $2.5 grand credit coming off. Crossover, paving and sub-base, maximum 8 meters. Yep, so that's a pretty good one. Some average builders don't include it, which is terrible. The crossover is the part between the road and your driveway. It should be matched with what your driveway is, but you'll be surprised how many budget builders don't include it and then try and sting you $1,500 when really it costs like $300 to do it. Hard digging due to traces of limestone. That's included in your site works cost. Material handling and BOW assessment. BOW assessment is bushfire attack level. I'm sure you guys are all over that. Some things that your site works does not include, right? Boundary fence removal and reinstatement, including BA20A forms. So if there's basically an old asbestos fence that's leaning over, basically in like a subdivisional block or whatever, generally the builder won't include that in the site works cost. That would be an added extra. There's also a form that you have to do to get council permission and your neighbour's permission to reinstate it. Generally, whatever that cost is, the 2 neighbours split it 50-50. Okay. Removal of large tree and vegetation and or trees. This is a bit of a project builder thing because a small builder will go to your block before they give you a quote. So they're going to know if some vegetation or trees need to be removed. You know what I mean? Which directly contradicts the very first one that this earthworks one said, including removal of light grass vegetation. This is now saying removal of large vegetation. Who the fuck tells the difference with light and large? Anyway. Removal of dump rubbish and sand from site, I agree. Builders shouldn't be the one to cop that cost, unfortunately. It happens more often than not in established areas. People will just start stockpiling crap on your block of land or before you buy the block. We don't know what's under there. There could be asbestos, there could be metal. It all has to be separated and taken to the tip. That is quite a costly one. So when you're buying an infill block, that's something to be mindful of. If you can see big humps and you can quite clearly see that things have been delivered and left there, I would allow at least $4,000 or $5,000 to actually properly get rid of that, because the builder will charge you accordingly. So new services are not included in fixed site works, such as power domes, sewer mains, water mains, gas lines, and relocation. So basically what the builder's saying is we expect it to be there already. If you're buying a clean block of land that doesn't have any of these headworks, they're called, then we're going to charge you for it. And that could be quite costly. That could be $5,000 to $8,000 for all of that. Planning fees and or local government fees and charges is not included in your site works. That's because generally whatever deposit you pay the builder, that should be included in there, okay? Wind zone requirements over an N2 rating could be included. I think they should know by this point anyway. Coastal zone requirements, it's only required if you're 2 k's from the ocean. Bushfire attack level requirements. Yeah, it's all a bit crap, to be honest, because they should know this, at this point before they're giving you the price of your house. Like, there's so much red flags here that basically say, I can shaft you at any one of these points because we've not yet allowed for it. So basically, it is so not uncommon for clients to sign up with a builder, get a great price, and then actually get hit with a 26k variation. And they can just disguise it in any of these sort of things that I'm reading out here. So bushfire attack level requirements. They should know if there's a bow required on this block of land, because 9 times out of 10, they've selected that block for you. If you've selected the block, we can go onto a simple government website and find out which bow is going to be associated with this block. And or if they've got half a brain, they'll know this. This is a red flag. If you're using builder brokers, great. I love the idea of a builder broker, as long as the person is actually qualified, not like a retired police officer or a vending machine salesman, you know what I mean, that's just now selling houses. As long as the person actually has a clue what they're on about, builder brokers are absolutely unbelievable. But if you get hit for an extra while going through a builder broker, it is insane, because they're actually meant to be getting out to 2, 3, 4, 5 different tenders. All these builders are using their resources to have a look at it. And you should start to see a bit of a trend if one says bow included, one says not, or the builder broker pieces it all together. So just be careful with builder brokers. That it just seems that every man and their dog now is putting a hat on and saying, I can do it. Make sure they've got some construction experience. Piling or drop footings with additional concrete pumps, that's a good one. Depending on the design of your house and how far you want to push the boundaries, and in terms of how far we can get it to certain easements or retaining walls and stuff like that, piling may be needed. This will only be determined by the engineer. Again, another thing that comes into consideration is the build method with this. Rock breaking is not included. That's pretty standard. However, if you are building in Byford and the hills and 𝗬𝗵𝗲 and stuff like this, yeah, there should be an allowance in there for rock breaking regardless, I believe. Traffic management, pretty important. If you're building on Leach Highway or, North Lake Roads or wherever, even 𝗵𝗲 up in sort of Alkimos area, you will need some traffic management. Again, depending on the method of construction. When it's a double brick house, you get these massive long haul lorries with a little bobcat with some forks on it. I can't remember the exact name. And basically it takes them about an hour to offload all the bricks and spread them around the site. They're huge. They're like 16 meters long. That's got to park somewhere right next to the block. So traffic management will be needed if you're going to build on a busy street, depending on the build method again. Waterlogging. Yeah. So look, that's basically it. So this is a generic what's included, what's not included site works costing sheet from a mixture of builders. So I've got about 20 builders worth of site work sheets and what's included and what's not from my previous business. I've got full copyright to all these, so I'm not doing anything legal by reading these and sharing these to you. That's completely fine. But it is a grey area. Site works doesn't have to be risky. I truly believe builders use site works as a way of getting extra money out of you. As sad as that sounds, just jump on Chunky Builders and type in site works and see what comes up. Try and find a builder who doesn't give any price increases at all, and just ask them, is there any, again, this is the thing, when you're dealing with builder brokers and or large project builders, the person you're actually dealing with, the pre-consult, the salesman essentially, let's say, just make sure they've got an idea of building, make sure they've got an idea of some trade related thing or something, like, I don't know, like a structural engineer or whatever, have something related, some qualification in building if they're going to be giving you advice on building. It's pretty simple. You know what I mean? You wouldn't go to the pharmacist to give you a fill-in. You go to a dentist, someone that's qualified in it, right? So yeah, if you're going and speaking to someone, just make sure they've got some idea in how to build a house, because this site works component is definitely the 10 out of 10 worst experience for clients, because it's the part where the builder legally gets to charge you more money, essentially. Ask the builder straight up, you want a fixed site work cost. Ask the builder straight up to include the site works price in the house price. Don't have it separated. You just want one price. You just go, here, bang, this is it. This is how much it is. You can separate it if you want, but just have it all in one price as a fixed contract. No provisional sums, no prime costs, nothing that can vary. If that means that it takes a little bit longer for the sales consultant or the builder broker or the builder to actually go to your block of land and do some physical research on site before giving you a quote, hey, get it done. But don't expose yourself to price increases. Don't expose yourself to ridiculous variations. But the biggest thing I can tell you about this is the site works cost is definitely double when you build a double brick home as opposed to a timber frame home. So just think about that, especially if it's an investment. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Bit of a deep and meaningful podcast today. It's not nice to talk about this because, truthfully, I'm sitting here telling you, I know you're going to get shafted by a builder and this is how they're going to do it. It's not nice to say it. It's not nice to think that at all, but I have to tell you guys so you know. So yeah, site works. Make sure they're fixed. Okay. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye.